It's been rumoured for quite a while now that Ubisoft could be remaking the original Assassin's Creed. I can only imagine how beautiful the Holy Land would look fully realised in modern graphics. Right now, one can only dream. This video will focus on if the rumours for a supposed AC1 remake are indeed true, as well as what could be included in it, along with how I think a remake should be tackled, if at all. So hopefully by the end of this video, we will be closer to answering the question, is this remake something to look forward to, or just a dream waiting to be shot into oblivion by Ubisoft? To make things perfectly clear, as of recording, Ubisoft have not officially announced a remake or remaster for AC1. The whole idea for an Assassin's Creed remake is purely speculative. That said, Ubisoft are well known for seeing any opportunity to cash in on their famous IPs in order to make a ton of money. So, is a remake possible somewhere down the AC pipeline? Yes, it's very possible. I might even go as far as to say probable. That's why I think this video is so important, to give Ubisoft some pointers as to what we want to see. Because, my god, if they screw this up, it'll be a travesty. So, if you like what you see here and want to add your voice to the conversation, you can subscribe to stay in the loop with the AC1 remake.
Back to formula.
It's most important to understand that AC1 is more of an art piece than a game. Its gameplay coincides with its narrative to deliver a thought-provoking social commentary on the themes it tackles. I'm not going to go into detail on what those themes are because this video's not an AC1 analysis. If you want to understand what I mean, I'd suggest watching Laser's 4-hour retrospective on the topic. But what I will say here for a bit of context is Assassin's Creed 1 is very thematic. The narrative leans on its core themes heavily for the duration of the game. What is the true meaning of reality in this world of supposed illusion? Where do the lines blur between good and evil? Is good and evil even a thing, or is that just an illusion? Assassin's Creed 1 also references many Bible verses in the story through dialogue too, only when necessary to convey these core pillars of the historical setting, the game's main theme, and how it all interlinks with Desmond across the ages through a goddamn virtual reality machine. Everything has purpose, meaning. Again, go watch Laser's video on this game, it's insane. If the core themes of this game aren't changed, then the main story doesn't have to be changed either. I mean, changing any detail alone could have wider reaching implications on the lore of the series in a butterfly effect sort of way. Then again, Ubisoft are known for not worrying too much about lore continuity as it is, so I wouldn't be surprised if they pull a 180 on the story. But best case scenario, everything stays the same. I do think, however, Ubisoft should implement the Bloodline storyline into the remake. As outdated the engine and level design is, the story is great and does a stellar job of filling in the gaps between AC1 and some of the later sequences of Altair's life in Revelations. I also think Darby McDevitt's writing is wasted on such an outdated game and would shine in an AC1 remake. Now, they could also implement the story of Altair's Chronicles into an Assassin's Creed 1 remake. The Chronicles storyline depicts Altair's time before the events of the first game in the form of a prequel. If this storyline is to be weaved in, it would have to be done right. Okay, here's what I'd do. I'd rewrite the dialogue because, what does this mean? And I'd make a new outline for the structure of how the story is told. Basically, just modernize it a bit. Also, Altair's Chronicles retcons the whole AC1 story, because Altair learns about the Templars for the first time during AC1. But here, we're fighting Templars? Actually, you know what? Scrap the whole of Altair's Chronicles. It's terrible. But on the off chance that Ubisoft really want to add that story to the remake, here's my advice. I wouldn't place this story directly and unavoidably in front of the main AC1 storyline. This is only gonna put players off who just want to play for nostalgia. Not to mention, throw off the first game's pacing completely. Add this as almost a sort of DLC. Make it optional and playable at any time. Give the player the opportunity to choose when they want to play it. Going back to Bloodlines though, I'd suggest a smooth transition from the end of AC1 to the Bloodline story, preferably through the return of memory blocks or sequences. Now, you're probably thinking about the sequences in Revelations that show a lot of Altair in his later life. Now, there's no need to try to incorporate these stories into the remake, because all that's going to do is potentially take the emotion and weight away from Revelation's story, as well as mess with the pacing of AC1's base game. You know, like, how are you going to add these stories in when they're small cut-off narrative sequences separated between many years? They're also intended to weave in with the direct narrative of Revelations. So yeah, no, it wouldn't make any sense. You'd have to write more to the narrative to fill in the gaps between each Altair memory recorded in the Masyaf keys. But with the Ubisoft writers of today, who aren't Darby because, you know, he's amazing, it's just not going to be on the level of AC1's writing, and so there could be a feeling of disconnect going from the original story to new content. I'm saying this under the conversation of the Revelations Altair sequences, but that also works for new story content for the game in general. In my opinion, just use what you've got up to Bloodlines. When it comes to gameplay, keep the core mechanics the same and don't add to them. The game works because of its simplicity. Those simple mechanics lean into the narrative and lore too, so don't mess with it. Maybe just make combat slightly more weighty, add air, ledge and hay assassinations, and for God's sake, please don't add a flying eagle. It gets rid of the need for eagle vision, which is intrinsic to the narrative of the game, so yeah, just don't do that, please. The tutorial, on the other hand, absolutely get rid of that. It's slow, completely takes the player out of the pace of gameplay, and it's really outdated. Just kick in with Altair in the crypt, and show button prompts and have on-screen pop-up tutorials during this segment. Maybe flesh out that section a little more to help with learning the basics. That's all you need to do. The puppeteering system should also remain the same. As you can see here in the Animus tutorial, this gameplay mechanic is built into the lore. Just as we use certain controls for Altair, Desmond also must interact with the Animus to control him, like a puppet. Desmond isn't controlling Altair, he's synced up with the 3D render of Altair through the Animus. He feels as if he is in the body of Altair and is doing everything Altair did, but if he were to actually try to take control, he was desync, just like the beginning of the game when the sync is unstable. Okay, so think about the Disney movie Ratatouille. Yeah, I know, just go with it though. The chef whose name I can't remember feels like he's cooking, like he can feel that it's his hands touching the frying pan and mixing the sauces, but it's actually Remy the rat controlling him by pulling his hair. Now, imagine there's no rat in the hat, and the chef is doing all that stuff in a virtual simulation. Now, imagine that chef is Desmond and Altair is the rat. That's how it feels for Desmond while in the Animus reliving his ancestors' memories. And us as the players using high and low profile, as well as different hand actions, is a way to portray this puppeteering control in the closest way Desmond would feel it. That's really as best as I can explain it. Anyway, yeah, Ubisoft, don't remove it because it's intrinsic to the core gameplay of AC1 and in turn its core narrative beats. Now the HUD and UI. The original Assassin's Creed used its HUD and UI design to tie in directly to the game's narrative. It isn't just a cool looking UI and HUD, it's deliberately made to resemble the Animus, specifically what Desmond himself would actually see during his sessions in the simulation. If you want to stay true to the original and keep within lore, then keep it Animus themed. Yeah, you can revamp the look of the HUD and UI, but it has to have an Animus theme that is presented in a way that is evidence that Desmond would be able to utilize it himself. And no, Desmond would not be seeing a Ubisoft Store tab in the Animus. Speaking of the Ubisoft Store, you cannot incorporate microtransactions into the AC1 Remake. You just can't. Please see this as an opportunity to add to and better represent an art statement that is Assassin's Creed. Don't see this as an easy opportunity to cash in. I know it's hard, but if you're doing this just for the money, or God forbid, a live service, then just don't remake this game. Focus on a new Assassin's Creed game for that stuff. Adding microtransactions into the Assassin's Creed 1 remake would be such a slap-in-the-face insult to the original and everyone who worked on it. Now, voice actors and dialogue. To be fair, this topic is subjective, and it really depends on a few different factors. Let's say the story and pacing of AC1 is completely retained in the remake. In that case, I'd suggest keeping the original dialogue for characters as it is. If it's already there and is delivered well, what need is there to re-record? If parts of the story and character dialogue is rewritten on the other hand, and for those sections you need new lines recorded, then for the sake of coherency throughout the game, you should re-record the whole thing. That also applies if the story of Bloodlines makes its way into the remake. You can't have low-budget PSP voice acting in one section of the game, and then Hollywood tier acting in the rest. That all said, a lot of the NPC dialogue in AC1 sounds like it was recorded in a World War II bunker. I guess to stay up to the standard of AAA games today, you'd need to remaster that audio, or if it's beyond saving, re-record. So, as I said, whether Ubisoft re-record or keep the voice lines in the remake really depends on a lot of things. I feel like Ubisoft can be fairly liberal when it comes to the soundtrack. As long as it fits in with the themes of the game and makes sense, then why not, right? I could be persuaded either way in this argument, to be honest. They say they're keeping the same soundtrack. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Or they say they're recomposing a whole new soundtrack. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. I think if you were to put a hidden blade to my throat and make me choose right now, I'd keep the soundtrack the same, maybe with better quality re-recordings. I don't know, let me know what you guys think about this topic. If it were up to me, the Ubisoft of today wouldn't be remaking Assassin's Creed 1 at all. Ubisoft as a company is pro-live service, pro-microtransaction, and in my personal opinion, anti-consumer. They don't release art such as the first Assassin's Creed game anymore. They release products to hit quotas. That goes against everything the original Assassin's Creed game was made for. So in today's gaming climate within Ubisoft, I don't think a truly successful AC1 remake would work. Sure, it would sell like hotcakes, but it would likely be a soulless husk. That's something I'd be saddened to see for such an iconic game. So why make this video then? You might be asking. Well, that's because I wouldn't put it past Ubisoft to go ahead with an AC1 remake, and if it's inevitable, maybe I can at least attempt to steer it in a somewhat salvageable direction. That's if anyone at Ubisoft that means anything sees this video and agrees, which admittedly is a long shot. I'm probably just screaming into the void at this point, but you know, at least all you Exile supporters are screaming right beside me, eh? If there's anything fundamental that you think I've missed or glazed over, please comment it below. The more of a conversation we can have about the Assassin's Creed 1 remake, the more likely Ubisoft are to listen. If they do watch this video, then you best believe they're reading all of the comments. Well, that's it. I hope you guys are doing well. If not, give me a message on Instagram. I'll try and help as best I can. I love you guys. May the Father of Understanding guide us. I will see you soon. Goodbye.